the dark, I play my dreams. Permaculture flows like sweet streams. I'm the daddy with the know-how seed. Creating the world like it's meant to be. Permaculture, P-I-M-P, I'm the king. That's the love in everything. Bringing change, making it last. Join the permaculture.
All righty, welcome to episode 331 of the Permaculture Pimpcast, where PIMP stands for Permaculture is my passion. The only Pimpcast on planet Earth where we discuss permaculture, preparedness, and practical living, and sometimes even parasites.
Permaculture, P-I-M-P, with soulful rays. In the Pimpcast, where we find our place.
Oh, yeah. All right, good to be here with y'all today and tonight. Well, I'm telling you what, y'all, I am very, 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 very excited about this podcast today. And of course, it's going to be a live stream. And of course, our largest audience is going to be listening in the audio platform. But folks, I can't even begin to tell you I'm as happy as a puppy with two Peters, because we're going to be talking about some stuff that is going to be extraordinarily valuable to everybody out there. First, I want to give a shout out to everybody in the chat right now. And of course, Denise over at Renewed Homestead, who's our moderator. So folks, you know the deal. Don't start no SH and there won't be no IT. So you know how it is. All right, I'm going to forego our advertisers tonight because I only have a limited time with our guest today, which is the great Jack Spirko over at the Survival Podcast. I can't even believe I almost screwed that up. I almost called you the Survivor Podcast, but the Survival Podcast. Jack, how you doing? I'm not hearing you, bro. I think I muted you. Okay. Now I can't hear you. Okay, let's try that again. 3 times the charm. There we go.
You gotta not mute me if you want to hear me. Hey, I'm glad to be here with you tonight, Bill.
Good. Man, I tell you what, I've been going through your book. We're going to get to it in a minute, folks. It's called The Laws of Life. And if you have any children out there, look, I'm going to be honest with you. If you have any adults, I've been reading Jack's book, and I'm telling you what, there's so much stuff in there. It's a doggone shame you and I are the same age, because this would have been very helpful to me if you were 30 years older than me and you wrote this thing like 30 years ago. We'll cover that in a minute, but Jack, right off the bat, before I get into you real quick, let me just make a quick announcement.
Sure.
Folks, this weekend, Strong Roots Resources, my buddy Kerry Brown's going to be holding a sheep and rotational grazing course. Now, this is going to be especially handy for a lot of you folks that are not working on, you feel like you got to be on large acreage. Look, you can scale this stuff up or down. So Kerry's going to be showing you how to do that, and it's only $40. It's going to be from 11 to 2 on June 22nd, and that's Strong Roots Resources. It's going to be a Bluebird Hill Homestead in West Knox County, Tennessee. So if we don't have it in the chat tonight, I'm sorry, Denise, I didn't get that over to you, but it will be in the show notes for anybody that's interested. Look, man, I got to hit you right up off the bat because everybody in this world is tripping about you name it. But let's just start in the Middle East, man, because if I don't get into this with you, these people are going to eat my lunch. If I had Jack Spirko on here and didn't ask you about what are your thoughts about what's unfolding right now, and how do you think it's going to pan out?
If I told you how I think it's going to pan out, I would just be completely guessing. I think what most people are concerned with really is what will the U.S. involvement be here, and I think there's this narrative forming among And when I talk about libertarians, it's like you're my people, I'm one too, but I can still criticize us. I think the narrative forming is that Trump is turning into Bush 2.0, right? Like being walked into this expanded Middle Eastern war. And I can't quell all the concerns, but I'd like to quell that one. I don't think that's happening. I really don't. I think Trump is doing what's pretty common of Trump, which is the madman persona, the whole, I don't know what I'm going to do to the last second type stuff to keep the Iranians off base and to try to basically be aligned with Israel without actually doing the things that Israel really wants him to do, if that makes any sense. I don't think he wants his legacy to be wrapping the U.S. into another endless Mideastern war. I think it's I actually find it disingenuous to some of my own people on my own team that are part of my expert council out of like Ron Paul's side, like Dan McAdams today. I had a segment and I played it and I just said what I thought about it, where, he's Bush. He's being led aimlessly into this. Bush wasn't led aimlessly into anything. Bush and Cheney worked together, and their plan was to go in, occupy the space, and never leave. It was to create a new U.S. hegemony in the Middle East. Love him or hate him, Oliver Stone is actually a pretty good filmmaker, and he makes some pretty true to type movies. And if you want to understand that dynamic, I would say go watch the movie W. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Oh, yeah.
Right. The thing that makes me trust Stone in that is I walked away from that movie with a whole new level of contempt for Bush and a whole new level of respect at the same time. When somebody doesn't like you and they make a movie about you and they show good and bad, that's pretty even-handed. So you know what I mean? Like him working on the oil rigs and stuff like that, like the stuff he legitimately did as a man prior to getting into politics was actually kind of impressive in a lot of ways. And when you are willing to say the good about a person when you criticize them, that usually means you're pretty being steady. So I don't think we're seeing that. I don't think Trump wants that. It's not even a defense of Trump. It's an analysis. You know me, I'm weather guy, right? Like I tell you the storm's coming. I'm not rooting for the storm. I tell you the storm's not coming. I'm not rooting for the non-storm. I'm just telling you what the radar says. And I don't think we're going to get involved with this very much, if at all, other than obviously because AIPAC controls our Congress. Like there's one Congress person, like even for all the laudations, Rand Paul has an AIPAC handler, right? Mm-hmm. The only congressman we have, Senator House, that doesn't have an AIPAC handler is Thomas Massie.
Yep.
Right? So there is no other entity. Microsoft, Apple, Google does not have a single lobbyist detailed to every single member of our Congress. The government of Israel does through AIPAC. So there's a certain amount of control that's in there. But I think what's most likely to happen is we keep feeding them weapons. They keep shooting at each other till they figure something out and come to the table. Or maybe we blow up, was it Fordor, the underground thing? We might do that. That's probably a bad decision. There's a lot of like Iran cannot hurt us militarily, but it doesn't mean they can't hurt us. And it doesn't mean they can't cause a lot of problems in the world. So that's probably better that we don't do it, but I think that would be the most extreme step we would take. That's just spitballing here. It has nothing to do with permaculture or my book, but you asked, so there you go.
Yeah, there's no way I'd be able. I mean, these people would be blowing up the chat right now if I had you on here and didn't ask. So what could potentially, I mean, let's just say this thing goes a little bit more sideways or somebody overreacts. And let's say they shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which in my estimation covers like 18% of the oil out there.
Yeah.
Oil skyrockets. Everything else goes sideways. I mean, let's just say that happens. Let's say somebody overreacts. Let's say we do put a big hole over there and they say, okay, here's your tip for that tat. And they shut down the Strait of Hormuz.
Tehran is a glass factory in 48 hours. That's what happens. You're
saying if they do that.
If they do that. Because that will be, Orange Man goes into Red Man rage and he's going to, I'm not saying nukes, by the way, if anybody takes it that right. I'm saying conventional weaponry. They will level Tehran. They'll say it's selective targeting, but I mean, it will be game on, but I still don't see a land invasion there. And I also think that whatever they're using to shut those straits down blows up really fast. Now, again, it's very important when I say something like that, especially for your audience, the ones that don't know me directly. I'm not rooting for that. I'm not saying that's the right decision. You're asking me what I think would happen. And the fact that I think that would happen, and I'm betting that proxies have already told the Iranian high officials that would happen, is probably why it will not. Because Iran will talk a lot of shit while this is going on, because any government would, because they have to maintain an air of control and propaganda to their people. But the last thing that Iran wants right now is the U.S. involved in this war. Because for all the talk, the United States military capability versus theirs, and again, I know when I say this, it sounds like rah-rah. It's not rah-rah, it's analysis, right? The U.S. military capability compared to Iranian military capability is like setting up a football game with like the champions of the Pop Warner 7th grade league with the NFL championship Super Bowl team of that year. It's that distinct. It's that bad. Now, that's not about an on-land invasion. We all know how that goes. That's different. I'm talking about force to force, military on military, blow shit up. They have no prayer in hell, and they know it. And so what they want to do is look like they're standing up to us while they're standing up to Israel, which they're doing not as good as a lot of people seem to think they are with, but they're more capable than you're being led to believe by, MSNBC and Fox News and all, as you call them, the prostitutes, right? They're way more capable than that, but they're not, I think, head to head. If they're just going to keep shooting at each other from a distance, Israel's got the advantage, but not the advantage we're being told. Because the other side of this is, I don't know about you, Billy, but this is the message I'm hearing from the media and from all of the go-alongs in the Congress and the cabinet and all. The Iranian mullahs are on the verge of complete collapse. They'll be gone in a breath, right? They're just about to fall over. They got nothing. Israel's just destroying everything, but they need our help.
How do you do both?
No, that doesn't, so if I just go back to when you're in school, right? The one kid gets in a fight with another kid on the playground, and the kid that's winning is sitting on the top of the other kid and just pounding him. Are you going to jump in and help the kid that's winning? Right? No, if he's got this, right? And at some point you might actually hey, Johnny, you're done. Tommy's done. Let's get you off of him, right? No, they're like, oh, Billy's beating the hell out of Tommy, but we need to help Billy because if Billy loses, we're all going to die. That's the message we're getting. If Israel goes, we all go. So the United States can shut Iran off like a light switch if we want to with our weaponry, but if Israel goes away, we can't do that anymore. It's asinine, and we should just understand something. When you touch something, and every time you touch the thing, you make it worse, you know what you should do if you are a responsible adult? Stop touching it. Can we just stop touching the Middle East? You and I were in the military at the same time. We were touching and messing the Middle East up when our old asses were in the army.
Right.
I don't want to say how long ago it is, but it's a while. Maybe it's almost half a century. Maybe we should stop doing this. And our grandfathers were in the military when we were screwing up the Middle East. I think it's time for us to just leave it alone.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I'm with you on every count there. And I'm wondering if we're seeing a whole lot of just crazy brinkmanship that's unfolding right now. And
I think so.
And I'm starting to wonder if it's going to be a much ado about nothing based on what I'm hearing some of the latest tweets come out of Trump right now. I'm starting to think your analysis, which, by the way, bro, I got to give it to you, man. A lot of what you've called regarding the money and everything else that's going on, man, I'm starting to wonder where you're hiding this crystal ball. I think in Lord of the Rings, they called it the Palantir, but I'm not going to get into that.
You want me to tell you how I know all this stuff? One's in the book. It's patterns.
Yeah.
If it happened before, it'll probably happen again. The other thing is, though, I'm not afraid to listen to anybody. So when I have a chief of staff that works for a congressman that I absolutely despise, I'll still listen to them. That's willing to be a source for me. When I hear a media source that I think is absolute scum, but this one time they're telling me something that has 10% truth in it, I'll pull that 10% out. I look at all the data from all the sources with no bias, as much as I humanly can. I assemble them together. I look at what it looks like, and then I say, what does the past tell me about this? And then that repeats to the future. So even in my book that we're supposed to be talking about, right, there's a part where I talk about patterns. And I said, if you show a little kid, like an 8-year-old, a graph of the stock market, it went up, it went down, it went up, then it went down, then it went up. What's going to happen next? You know what that kid's going to say? It's going to go down. That kid's smarter than all the people on MSNBC and Fox Money and all that stuff, right? That kid just looks at the pattern and goes, oh, gee, the minute you pull your bias away from this stuff and you start, acting like an umpire calling ball and strikes, and you don't say it, you actually mean it, then it's not that hard to be accurate. And, in this world, if you can be, I probably bat about 850, 900. If you could do that, you're, Spirko Damas, they'll say about me sometimes. It doesn't mean I'm always right. It just means I'm a lot of times I'm going to be more right than wrong. And I will get things totally wrong. And then you have to have a humorous sense about it. I don't know if you've ever heard me do it, but on the show, I actually have segments where I'll play this funky music and there's wah, 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 and I'll be like, Jack was wrong. And I'll make fun of myself for being wrong. And if you can't do that, you have no business talking about what's going to happen.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I got to say, man, I got to give it to you, bro. I wish I'd have gotten the Bitcoin back when you first told me about it. But hey, better late than never. And like you said, you get in at the price you deserve. So, yeah, it's just another little feather in the cap. So let's go ahead and swing over to the book because, folks, I'm going to flash it up on the screen here. And, of course, it'll be in the show notes, the whole 9 yards. Jack, I got to ask you, I mean, you've been at this a long, long time. I started listening to you not long after you started. I want to say it was back in 08 or 09 I started listening. And I got to say, after all that you've done, after all the podcasts you've done, what was a catalyst to make you say, okay, this book needs to be written?
So it was, the show actually turned 17 years old tomorrow, if you can believe that.
Wow.
But it was, probably 14 of those 17 years of people saying, write a book, write a book, write a book. And I'm like, I'm a podcaster. I'm a talker. I'm not a writer. And I'm not a great technical writer. I can be. It was actually a job of mine at one time because I was doing proposals for like data center design and stuff like that. But it's not my passion to write. I love to teach. I can be an okay writer. But when you have people that follow you that long, that love what you do and say, I want a book and I want something concise about improving lives that I can hand to somebody that's never going to sit down and listen to a 90-minute or a 2-hour podcast. And they don't go away and it never stops. Eventually you say, maybe the universe is trying to tell me something. Maybe God is trying to tell me something. Maybe I need to do this. And as I wrote the book, there were a lot of setbacks in writing that book. COVID hit right in when I really started doing it in earnest and all, and it got put off until last month. And then I finally released it, and you see, like, well, maybe this was a good idea because the week we dropped that book, we were #1 best-selling new release on Amazon the day we dropped it and the day after we dropped it. We were on like 4 different categories in the top 5 bestsellers. And we were sitting on lists with books by like big publishing houses, big name authors. That didn't last, but you know what? You can't take it away. It happened. I have the screenshots to prove it. And so I think there is a real demand for a book like this because for those listening to it that don't know kind of who I am and my backstory, I come from nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean literally nothing. I grew up the son of a bootleg coal miner. That's about as rough. Central Pennsylvania bootleg coal mining family. It doesn't get much lower on the status symbols than that. And I built a really great life. I mean, even before I started doing the podcast, I had come to a reasonably high level of success in corporate America. And this book is how I got there. And it's less a step-by-step, like do A, B, C, and D and put slot A into tab B. It's more of a how to think. It's laws of life. And these are 16 laws, as I call them, of life that I base my life on. And I want to be clear, I don't claim to have authored these laws. Maybe a couple of them. Most of them are well-known principles. Some are direct, quotes by famous people. But these are all things that when I locked onto these principles, I said, I'm going to make that part of my life. And I'm going to base my life on these things. And I will not stray from them. I will treat them like what they are, laws, not suggestions. And when I say law, I also try to divide law up into 3 categories, right? So 3 categories are, you have a law of men, which I don't really care about, right? A law of men means a bunch of people in suits and ties got together and passed something to tell us what to do with ourselves. We have to know those things and be aware of them so we don't end up in bad places, but that's not really important to me. Then we have natural laws and we have scientific laws. A natural law is something like if you drop something, it falls. That's called gravity. And a natural law does not care about your opinion. You can't break a natural law without a consequence. You can break a law of man any day of the week and get away with it scot-free and never hear about it. People do it all the time. Most people break at least 1 law a day. I think there's a book called something like 2 felonies a day or something like that, or 3 felonies a day, right? So people break those laws all the time. But if you break a natural law, there's a consequence. If you go up on a building roof and say, I no longer believe in gravity and jump off the building, gravity believes in you, and splat, you're gone. Scientific laws are just natural laws that we've tried to explain, right? So I'm making a differentiation there just to help people understand. And because what I try to do is take natural laws and then codify them into a way that actually apply to our lives that would hit and resonate with people. And my target for this book is people about 15 to 35. I think anybody can benefit from it. You're about my age. It's probably a book you enjoy reading, and it probably will help you. But like you said at the beginning, how would you have liked to read this book when you were 20 years old?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, as I'm going through it, I mean, first of all, let me just thank you right off the bat because, man, one of my biggest frustrations, there's nothing I love to do more than read. But what drives me crazy is when the typeset is so freaking small that
Can I stop you for a second, please, Billy?
Yeah.
Over there in your comments, there's a person called Agatha Raisin. And the statement is Jack is an atheist. Because I invoked God. I am not an atheist. And I do not mind being called a lot of things I'm not, but do not call me a fucking atheist. I'm sorry, Billy. I know you don't like those words, but do not do that. I am not an atheist.
No, I don't have a problem with those words.
I have never, ever made a statement that anybody should ever take to believe that. I find that to be a personally insulting thing to say by a person that I find to be completely ignorant of who I am, and I would appreciate an apology. I don't need you to worry about it, Billy. I'm just telling that person that. If you want to know what I am personally, I call myself a deist. I believe in God. I don't believe in any organized religion. That's my choice. You have a choice to, and I always respect the beliefs of other people. I find that incredibly insulting.
Well, I can't even, I'm an avid listener of yours. I don't even know where that could have possibly come from. I'm
probably not singing from the same hymn book. I think we have a lot of problems with that in the world.
Okay. Well, you know what? We're always going to have those people on there.
Yeah,
and
I'm done. I just wasn't going to let it go without saying anything because
no, bro, you drive it any way you like. But back to your book. I mean, first of all, I want to thank you because of how it's written. I don't know if the copy I have, because it's not like the copy everybody else has. But one of my biggest frustrations as I get older is I can't stand tiny little letters on a page. That makes it 10 times harder for me to read because I read at an accelerated rate, and I read probably 3 times faster than most. But it slows me down a great bit. And then I have to go back and reread things when my eyes aren't working as fast as my brain is. So that was number one. That was just, and also it's an easy, when I say it's, folks, this isn't like a Louis L'Amour novel where it's intentionally written at a 3rd grade level. Okay. It's not that. It's to the point. There's no BS. There's no fluff. And you jump straight into it. So as soon as I started reading the forward and then got into the introduction, you said it right there. I mean, for anybody who's starting out in this world, especially in this world where it's changing on a dime, where so many of these jobs out there, I was just listening to a podcast, for example, the other day where a guy was saying, okay, he was one of the godfathers of AI. And he's like, okay, what would you recommend kids do? He says, honestly, you better learn how to do something with your hands because those are going to be the jobs that go away last. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay. And then I thought, honestly, I can tell you where and what I was doing. I was down in the compost barn flipping compost, and immediately I thought of your book, because your book is as a person that came up in the trades that went through multiple apprenticeships, whether it was in the butchery trade or whether it was in the electrical trade or even in the farm trade for that matter. I was like, good night. I immediately thought back to your book and chapter 1 right there, be on time.
Yeah.
And if I had a nickel before I got out, before I retired from doing the electric work, Jack, you want to know the number 1 and number 2 things that would get kids, that would run them off faster than anything? Number 1, they would never show up on time. And number 2, can't put these stupid phones down. Yeah. Can't do either. Yeah. And I love how in chapter 1, you started off with that. There's so many gems in this book, folks. You definitely want to get it. I mean it. But that was never in the world I grew up in. It was just kind of baked into the cake, man. Show up on time. In fact, if you're not 15 minutes early, you're already late. Why did you start with that?
So I've given a few interviews on this book now, and I've noticed in the comments a lot of young people just taking that to be, well, it's obvious and it's not really that important. First of all, it's not obvious and it is important. And the fact that you don't think it's important shows that it's not obvious. And I don't think that people really get, and this is the point I try to make in the book, is it's not just about being on time. It's about respecting the other person. And every law in this book has like a main macro point that it comes out to, like be on time, because by being on time, you keep your job. By being on time, you keep your relationships, etc. Right? The things that people would think of on the surface of that advice. But the way we think is intrinsically critical to the entire outcome of our life. So we have to understand the word capital to understand the word value, because there's not one kind of capital. When I say capital, Most people probably have an image of a big stack of $100 bills or something, right? That is financial capital. We also have social capital, and we have what I call temporal capital. In other words, time has value. Even a completely natural form of capital, like a old growth forest, how many centuries of time did it have to consume to produce that beautiful forest that we look at and we stand in awe of and has incredible value to us? It's time. So my time has value. My time is one of my forms of capital. Billy, your time is capital. If I say to you, yes, Billy, I will be on time at 5:30 Central Standard Time for your podcast that you asked me to be on, I will be here, then I'm going to be here, not just because it's a professional commitment, because it's a personal commitment. And Billy Bond's time is as valuable as my time. And when I show up 5 minutes late, what I'm saying is my time's worth more than yours. That's what you're really saying. Now, the danger in that's beyond just the time-based situation is that then will become a cascade through your entire life. You will then view yourself as more important than other people in just about everything you touch, because the one thing that we measure on a daily basis is time. So when we measure something every day and then we violate the principle by which that is measured, we can't help but corrupt everything in our lives, if that makes sense. And in the book, I tell a story of I literally landed a $600,000 sales contract.
Yeah.
Because I was pissed off at somebody that wasn't on time. And the dude sitting next to me, hearing me talk to my inside salesperson, going, find this clown and get him here before my other contact gets here so I can brief him, because I don't want this to go bad, because I went out of my way for this guy to get this meeting. And now he's late and I don't have time to brief him. And the dude next to me, we're killing a couple of martinis together, says, hey, what's going on? And we start shooting the breeze. He makes a phone call because we start getting into what we do. And he was in finance. I was in computer test equipment, but he knew a guy at a company I was trying to get into. He makes a phone call to him. It's 5:30 in the evening at a bar. This guy calls his buddy and says, here's his number. Call him Monday morning. He'll take your call. Okay. That's because I was on time. And that's because I didn't tolerate somebody else being, and it just so happened that way. Okay. And I can't tell you that's going to happen to you. But what I can tell you is, if you're consistent with this one law of 16 in this book, that it will have an impact in your life across time. And that's the other thing. These things are cumulative. There's so many things in that book. You're like, well, if I do that, it's no big deal. If you do it once, it's probably not. But you won't do it once. You'll do it over and over and over. I'm working on the second book right now, and I don't want to say what it is in the second book yet, but there's one particular characteristic that if you do this, I worked it out, to the average person will do it 60,000 times in their life to the negative.
Wow.
How can you expect that something you do 60,000 times to the negative that everybody thinks is okay to do will not negatively impact your output? Of course it will. It has to.
Man, I tell you what, there were so many chapters in here. Honestly, this is a book. I know the age demographic in which you wrote it for, but honestly, as a guy who's pushing 55, man, there were some things in here that kind of put me on my heels as well. Things where I'm thinking, amen, amen, amen. I'll cover the other things that really, really put me back on my heels. Things I've personally struggled with and things I've had to come to terms with. But folks, I'm telling you, I don't care where you are in that age spectrum. I don't care where you are in the continuum. I promise you, there are multiple nuggets in this book that you're going to take home that are going to blow your mind. Another one that I'm not going to give away anything in the book, but
you can give away anything you want. I'm not that author. I'll tell you anything you want to know about what's in the book. I figure that will sell more books than it. I honestly, as a podcaster, I hate interviewing authors because they do that. So I won't do it.
Okay. Well, I'm just
open season, bro.
No. Okay, cool. I'm going to jump right into it. But the one thing, and this is going to sound, man, if somebody said, list your pet peeves, man, I can't stand, man, I'm just going to go ahead and say it here. And I don't even care. There's a reason why I don't go out to eat a lot of times with black folks, because they don't tip. Okay. When Oprah's doing entire shows about this, it's a systemic problem.
Okay.
And when you talk about frugality versus being cheap, and you bring up the comparison of a garden hose, which I'm like, amen, because I do exactly the same thing. I will spend now. I mean, I love how you break it down, but honestly, there is a massive difference Oh, you know what? There are things in this world I'm just going to be flat out cheap about. But there are things when it comes to something that really, really matters. And I'm glad you brought up like the garden hose. I don't fool around on that because I need them for what I need. You know what? There are times I have that hose on for hours because I'm not sure when I'm going to need it down in the high tunnel or in the orchard or the food forest or whatever. I can't have this thing springing a leak when I'm on well water. You know, I can't be burning up pumps around here. But Jack, maybe go into this thing between, there's a difference between frugality and cheap. And for the record, I can't stand cheap people.
Me either. So I think I tell the story in the book that when I got out of the military and then I moved here to Texas after that, then I went back to Pennsylvania, took a job up in that area. And I was visiting my father while I was looking for a home to bring my family up there. I went to this donut place. I think it was like Dunkin' Donuts, you know, it was kind of a big hobnob place for people to hang out, not work during the day. And I'm sitting in there. And because I was so separated from the place I grew up at the point, you know, the confession is, I think if I had never left, I wouldn't have noticed. I would have been one of the people doing it. I just heard cheap, 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 cheap. I mean, I heard people, you should go down there. This is cheaper. Like the number one word they were using was cheap. Yeah. And I'm like, holy crap, no wonder I got out of this place. Like, how are these people ever going to get anywhere? And then I realized, like, they're not. And it's not because they're using cheap. They're using cheap because they're not going to get anywhere. They had already resigned themselves. And this is like 10 o'clock in the afternoon on a weekday. I'm sitting in there because, you know, back then it was my old man didn't have high-speed internet. So you could go to a Dunkin' Donuts and you had high speed. So I'm doing work while these people are talking. And there's like not all just retired old people. There's like prime working age people sitting around talking about what's cheap in a Dunkin' Donuts at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Like, I'm like, why don't you go do something? You won't worry about this anymore. But the big thing I would say is, if I tell you, and I know how you feel already, but think of it just for the average person. If I tell you this thing is cheap, do you think that means it's a good deal? Or do you think that means it's junk?
Junk.
Right? Junk is the first thing, even if you're like, well, it might be a good deal, but you think it's junk. Poorly made, plastic crap, Chinese garbage, right? So when you're constantly saying cheap, 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 cheap to yourself internally or externally, and you're always thinking cheap, the number one thing you're doing is you're teaching yourself that you're not good enough to have quality. And you're lowering your expectations. And any parent will tell you what happens when you lower your expectations for a child. They meet your lowered expectations. Right. That's how that works. So you become your own parent and you start creating lower expectations that you begin to meet then. And this is what I call life cancer. It begins to erode your entire life. And where I look at this, and you know, the hose example you gave is, I found good quality hoses. I give a certain brand name in the book. It doesn't really matter because there's other ones. But like if you go to the store and you buy the cheapest hose they have, it will kink, it will break, it might last a season. And even while it's working, you're miserable because it just doesn't function. You try to pull it out and you turn the thing on and no water comes out. And I thought I turned it on. That's because it's got like 3 of these in it, right? All kinked up together. And you have to go undo it. Or you get a good hose, you pay twice as much for it, but it just works. And 5 years later, it's still working. And the cheap one, you've bought 4 of them in 5 years, and you've actually spent more money.
Yep.
And I don't do this with a hose, but I tell people if it's a significant expenditure, and to me, that means, would you even blink before you spent the money, assuming you're a responsible adult, right? If you're a responsible adult and you would say, I don't know, then your decision should go in a spreadsheet in Excel. Right. And I use the hose as an example. I don't put the hose in Excel. I use it as an example. But it is a lifetime of making decisions that now has many decisions that I make that don't have to go into Excel anymore. I'll buy the $60 hose and I'll think about it that way. But if my wife and I go to a nice restaurant and I drop $200, I don't even think about that. But you know what? 20 years ago, I did. And for the last 40 years, I've thought this way. And that's why I can do that now. That's why I can make that decision on the fly right now. And I still rein that in. Like, it's not like we do that every week or something, right? But when we're going to do it, we go do it. And then there is a place for the cheap option in the right situation. My story in the book is my wife and I love a place called Sanibel Island. And we spent a lot of our vacation time there. And the hotel that we unfortunately can't stay at, the hurricane destroyed it and haven't rebuilt it yet. But the one we used to stay at, they have a service where they'll bring 2 nice chairs out and a big umbrella every morning for you. And we're there like 10 days. We don't go for 2 days. We go for a week and a half. And that's $20 a day. Well, if I'm going for 2 days, I don't even care. It's $40. 10 days, that's $200. Even I care about $200, right? So we go by the cheap store and we buy like a couple $7 chairs and a $20 umbrella. That's perfect for our needs for 10 days. We sit there, we enjoy the beach. It's our thing. We don't get burned by the sun. We have a place to put our stuff off the ground. And at the end of the trip, we give it away to somebody. And we tell them, hey, when you leave, unless you're going to take it home, like if you drove here, fine. But if you traveled here like we did, give it to somebody else and like tell them to do it. And my hope is maybe that goes 5 or 6 or 7 times, right? So it's like a very benign, simple form of charity. Plus we took the cheap option because it called for the cheap product. But a garden hose, how long are you going to use a garden hose, Billy? Until you can't, right? Exactly. It's underwear. Until it wears out, you're using it, right? Like that's how guys are anyway, right? And so then if it's something you have to have, and it's going to be around a while, then you need to put some thought into what you buy. And instead of trying to save money now, save money across time. That's frugality. Like, and that's another, like, that's a depression era, like Great Depression era value that I take from my grandparents on both sides. And they were not cheap people, right? Because they understood, like, if you're going to spend any money on something you're going to use next week, next year, next 5 years, you need to think about that timeline. And if that means you have to save up for something, then you save up and you defer until you can afford it. You know, another example, and this is not in the book, is in my family, we were all big fishermen. And our number one reel of choice, and they still make something called this, but it's not what it used to be, a Mitchell 300 spinning reel, right? I don't know if you know what these are. They're black. They were made in France back in the day. They were about $40 in the 60s and 70s. Okay, that was a lot more money than it is today. And for poor people to buy a reel like that, you had to save up for it. But what you knew was, if I buy that reel and I take care of that reel, I'll give it to my kids. Right? That is the mindset we've lost. And I dare say we've lost it because we switched about 1971 when everything went sideways, right? We went from a somewhat gold standard to a fiat economy. And as soon as you go to fiat money, you get fiat products, you get fiat healthcare, you get fiat food, you get fiat government, you get fiat housing. Right. My dad's house is finally falling apart because he's not taking care of it anymore. But it was built in like 1873. You think a house today is going to be around in 2023? Do you really believe that? Because I don't. I know how we build houses today. We build fiat houses. We have fiat cars. Really, we don't make anything better than we used to except technology.
No, I couldn't agree more, man. And we mirror each other so much in exactly the same way, because that's exactly. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. I said it's kind of scary, actually.
Yeah, bro. I think we're brothers. Man, I got to look at my family tree, man, because somewhere there's got to be some crossover.
Look for an ancient ancestor in Romania, man.
Hey, in my family, hey, you never know, man. You only know who your dad is because mom told you. So we got some weird stuff going on there. But yeah, we roll the same way. We typically eat all of our meals at home. We prepare. When I say we, I mean mostly my wife. Mm-hmm. Of course, I chip in whenever I'm able. But honestly, if I'm going to go out, I'm not going to take her to a kind of restaurant where you look up to order as opposed to the one where you look down to order.
Yeah. So, I like that.
So if we're going to go and do all that, I'm not going to be pinching pennies. Whatever I want on that menu. But like you said, there was a time where I had to say, okay, what is the more? And I was trained back in my first ever sales job, never, ever, ever use the word cheap. If you have to say something similar to it, say inexpensive. Don't say, sir, would you like to buy the cheap one? No, you don't do that. And then I was like, okay, so
cost effective.
Yes. Would you like the one that, does the job or whatever the case, or the affordable one, or the one that's less? Don't use cheap, folks, because like Jack said, it rewires your mind in a bad kind of way. And Lord knows I got enough of that to try to unwind already without adding my own curses to it. So let's get into some other stuff.
I am sorry for that, man. But that statement really bent me. I don't know what you could say about me that might offend me more than that. I'm sorry, man.
No, man. No, it's all good, bro. I want you to hit on a few things. One that one that was really a big deal, and it was one of the ones that was, strangely enough, it was the hardest for me to learn. Early on, I was learning when I realized that all of my family came from working class, blah, 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 the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
You know, when I was out there realizing, you know what, I think maybe there might be more to this life. I think I'm cut out to be more than what I've become. Everybody out there, when I was trying to make that transition, would, I think to a certain extent, their intentions were good, but I was always taking advice from people that were in that class. I was always getting bad advice from people who haven't moved the needle any further than I had gone.
Yeah.
And then you have a chapter in here that says, take advice only from the competent.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest mistakes I learned, because even though these family members might at first, and believe it or not, I think to a certain extent, there might even be a fair piece of jealousy in there of people seeing you advance past where they are. But Jack, maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Taking advice only from the competent.
Yeah, the jealousy thing's the crab effect, right? You put the crabs in the cooler, and the one trying to get out, and the other one's like, you ain't getting out, you're staying here with us, right? I think that might be some of it, but this actually came from my father, and I have a tenuous relationship with my family, but I did get some good things out of it. I try to credit those things where they are. And my father always said, don't take advice from anybody unless they're doing better than you. And before anybody gets offended by that, I've actually mitigated that, and it's in the book Mitigated. I'm just saying that was the genesis of it. And his example was, I had an uncle named Stefan, and he had been married and divorced 3 times in Pennsylvania, which has alimony, right? And he was like a machinist at a plant. Like, that was his job. And in spite of that, the dude retired a blue-collar millionaire with his 4th wife. All right. Now, to stay a millionaire on a machinist salary in a state with alimony with 3 ex-wives, that's kind of impressive. So what my dad said is, if Uncle Stefan, it's actually my great uncle, if he tells you anything about money, shut up, open your ears, and listen. If he gives you advice about women, run away. So even his advice was really drilled in toward, don't take the advice of anyone who's not doing better than you at the thing they're giving you advice in. And I think that's really good advice. And if you go back to a book called The Richest Man in Babylon, written in the 1920s by George Clausen, he says, basically seek the advice of men who are wise in the management of their gold, which means their money, right? Like, he was telling a narrative, so he put it in like ancient speak, right? And so when I read that book, pattern recognition, like, okay, that's my dad's law. But over the years, I've even mitigated it further to, I won't take your advice in something you have no information about, that you have no success track record in. You don't have to be as good as me or doing better than me even in that thing for you to have value. Like, there's people I know that have a podcast much smaller than mine, but they're good podcasters, so I'll take their advice about a podcast. There's people I know that they're in a totally different business, but they've run multiple businesses. I'll take their business advice, even if I've been more successful, because they have competence in the thing they're giving me advice on. What I'm not going to do is let somebody who's never signed the front side of a paycheck in their life, who's never made a dollar that somebody else didn't pay them on a W-2, tell me how to run a business. Why would I do that? That's not arrogance. That's common sense. Like, you wouldn't take mechanical advice from someone who failed, hopefully, 6th grade physical science. You'd say the person that can't work out the difference between an inclined plane and a lever probably shouldn't be telling me, how to handle machinery, right? Like, this is not the person to listen to. Well, I'm not going to take advice on my business from somebody that doesn't know how to run a business. And I don't believe you can know how to run a business until you've done it. You can study all the books. You can read everything there is out there. You can become a chat GPT in human form. You can regurgitate business formulas. You can explain A equals L plus C and how to balance books. And you can do all that stuff until you actually go to war with the market, which is what running a business is. You don't know how to run a business, because everything you think you know, the first time you pull the trigger and do something, it's going to blow up in your face. And you know that, Billy, because you've done it.
Yep.
Right? It will blow up in your face, and that's okay. The market is our guardian. The market protects us from stupid investments long-term that tie up human labor and capital and long-term effects on our children by stopping it. Now, government breaks it. I'm not going to go into that. Government breaks it because they have an artificial money printer and they can mandate things and eliminate competition. But if you come up with a truly stupid idea and you put it out in the market will quash it, or it will be a fad. What's his name? I can't think of his name now. George something. The guy that Gary Dahl, the guy that invented the pet rock. The pet rock was stupid. He made $1 million on it in the 70s. So he was able to tell the story, get it to market, and capitalize on it. But you can't patent a rock with paint and googly eyes. So after about a couple of years of that, and I just barely remember this, I was just old enough to remember it. They were in every grocery store, every gas station. Everybody had pet rocks. They were just imitations, and then it went away. I don't know if you know about this, though. So he tried to do a bunch more gimmicks, like canned earthquakes and stuff like that. None of it took off. But he was actually a very successful person. He only died like in 2012. He was deeply involved in the early days of the internet. He built multiple marketing and advertising companies very, very successfully. He still did the work, right? You're not going to get there without doing the work. And the market is the guardian that protects us from the stupid. It's a good thing, if that makes sense.
No, it does indeed. Folks, I am telling you, this is a must read. When Jack sent this book to me and he autographed it for me to the Permaculture Pimp Daddy, man, I was like, okay, man, I'm going at 100 miles an hour around here, but I'm like, okay, no matter what, I'm going to take time. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't even through John Pugliano's forward to this. And I was like, okay, as soon as I got into the intro, I was already hooked. I'll be honest with you. I was hooked because before I read any book, first thing I always do, and this is part of the training as far as accelerated learning, you go through and you look at obviously the table of contents or, or chapters. And I'm looking at you had me the moment I read the chapters, and one of the ones that jumped off at me right out of, I couldn't even believe you put this in the book. And I was like, man, I swear me and this guy shared some DNA. The one on apologize like an adult.
Oh,
that is, look, I'm not the best talented person at this or that and this. We all have our superpowers. I really believe that. But one of mine, I really believe this, is when I'm wrong about something, I will not let the sun set before I make things right. If I know that I'm wrong, I will not only apologize, but I will ask for forgiveness, which I put myself prostrate before the person I'm asking it to, because now I put myself in their hands. Now, that was another trick that I learned from somebody else, older brother, in fact, is to not just say I'm sorry, but to ask for forgiveness. But I was blown away that you thought to put that in the book. Why?
Because we all apologize today. And I say all, I mean the average person apologizes today like a celebrity caught in a scandal.
Exactly.
And it is the cancer that eats your life that you don't realize is eating your life. And this is what I mean. I'm sorry that I fill in the blank, but you. The second you do that, it's over. The person you're apologizing to just heard you say it's your fault. Even if the first part of your apology was completely contrite, even if you're absolutely right with what comes after, but if that person really did that, that's not your problem. The fact that you are apologizing means you effed up. If you didn't F up, you don't apologize, right? So if somebody's upset at me, but I didn't do anything to them, I'm not apologizing. I get people all the time that email me. They're very angry because maybe I use the word retarded in a podcast. I'm sorry. I'm from the 1980s. We would have, when I was running around with my friends back in the 80s, Gen X, we would have never called a person who was like a legitimate special needs or autistic person retarded. We called our friends retards when they acted like retards because they were capable of not doing it. When somebody did something dumb, you said it. So I'll say that. And then somebody will write me this huge, long, emotional letter, and I'll just say, it's a perfectly good word. It doesn't apply to this person that you're worried about, that you wrote me about. Good luck. And I'll get an email back that says something like, well, I'm never listening to you again. Well, God bless you. Right? That's okay. Like, that was always okay, by the way, right? And my point of that isn't that retard's an okay word. It's that you apologize when you believe you did something wrong. So now you know you're apologizing because you did something wrong. Okay, so then what the other person did doesn't matter as to your apology, right? You own what you did, you apologize, and you let it go. And if you expect that person, this is a conversation I have with my grandchildren who are 8 and 14. I feel like, what happened to our world that I have to have this conversation with people who are 30, but I do. When you apologize and you're sincere and you're done, you don't control when that other party accepts it or if they accept it at all. You've done your part. Now be a grown-up and give them space. Now, the big reason most people won't immediately reciprocate, they're waiting for the but. At all their life, they've dealt with the people that always have the but you also did. No, shut up. Just be quiet. And this is what I say. Apologize to them and treat them like a dog. And when you tell somebody treat people like a dog, they go, oh, well, wait a minute. How do you treat a dog? How do you treat a dog, Billy? I love my dogs. I don't know about you. Like when you watch a movie and like everything's getting blown up and the dog's like, think of with the aliens and Will Smith, Independence Day, when the dog's running through the tunnel and the fire's coming, you root for that dog harder than you root for 5 million people in the middle of New York City. The dog is what, like, so the dog, we love dogs. So when I say apologize, it's like a dog. What I mean is if you were in your kitchen and your dog came in the kitchen and your dog got too close behind you, you didn't see him, you stepped on his foot, you turn around and say, I'm sorry, buddy. Right? I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. And the dog doesn't maybe know the words, but he immediately feels your energy and your tone. Right. Like, then the dog that you just stepped on will try to comfort you, right? It's a natural thing because it was genuine. Now, you're not going to say, but it's your fault, buddy, because you might need to go to a special place with doctors that help you out if you start explaining that to a dog because you know the dog doesn't understand it. Apologize that way to a person. Yes, they'll understand it, but they'll understand it and then they'll internalize it. And they'll change what you said because the moment you're apologizing, they're probably angry. You did something, so they're angry. Even if they've quaffed their anger a bit, there's still an underlying anger. You need to understand that when you apologize to somebody, that it's up to them the time frame of the response and the type of the response, and you need to be a grown-up and walk away. And 9 times out of 10, what's coming is a contrite, if they did something to apology and an acceptance of yours. But you might have to give them time because they don't know. Now, this transcends everything. Because if you're not the person that will do that, then you're the person that when you become a supervisor are going to end up throwing your subordinate under the bus. Right? And when you do make a mistake with your subordinate and you're always the person that apologizes and owns it, and you tell them, you know, Bill, I'm sorry. I really was too harsh on you in the meeting and it won't happen again. You know what? They believe you. But when you're always the but you screwed up the report. You know you screwed up the report, Billy. I don't have to tell you that. Right? And I'm your supervisor. I'm the one that submitted it, so it's really on me anyway. Why? So you have to own that. And then again, all these things, they have a very obvious point of application, but they have this cascading effect through your entire life. And they lead to hundreds, if not thousands per year of bad little micro choices that all don't seem to matter. But the accumulation of them over time just tears everything apart. And that's why you see two people that look like they kind of have the same job. They both seem to work really hard. They both seem to have their stuff together, but one person ends up here and one person ends up here. Those little things across time are what makes that differential.
Touche. Man, when I saw that chapter alone, I was like, man, that one just, and like I said, for me, it's, if I know that I've really stepped out of order, I've always done it with my wife and my son. And try to lead by example. I mean, by no means am I perfect. Have I gotten so many things wrong? But that was one thing I know that I've gotten right is by saying, look, I am really sorry about this. Will you forgive me?
Yep.
And by doing and then leaving it there, you know, and like you said, I'm see, this is why I'm so glad I got to that part in the book, because you don't always get, because I'm expecting anybody would that when you lay yourself bare like that, you're expecting an immediate response of somebody to say, okay, we're cool. But it doesn't always work that way. So I'm glad you feel
how bad was the offense, right? If the offense was I stepped on your toe, you're probably okay. If the offense was I did something to set your career back, you might never forgive me, and I have to be okay with that because I'm the one that committed the offense. What I'm saying is, this is when my grandpa put it, the hat comes off, it goes in your hand, and the shoulders go back, and you make eye contact.
There you go.
If you won't do that, you don't mean it. And that's why, like, when my 8-year-old granddaughter, who I love and I try to be as gentle with as I can, if she does something that I don't like and was clearly wrong to her grandmother, my wife, and she goes, oh, I'm sorry. No, honey, we are going to look at grandma. We are going to look her in the eye and we're going to own it. And God, I wish that more people had done that with their kids, because a lot of the mess we're in, we wouldn't be in.
Yeah,
that seems overly simplified, but, you know, and this is the thing, like we had that little tip about religion in the beginning. We have totally different faiths. That's okay. These are principles that are human. that have a bridge that is universal. Like, I've never had anybody actually object to any of these things, including the ones that are going in the next book and maybe the third one, once they understand what I'm saying. Now, I've had people object. Here's an example. I say, if you want wealth, hold money like sand. I don't know if you've gotten that far in the book yet, right?
Yeah.
Right. You hold money like sand. So people think that you become wealthy by holding all your money tight-fisted. And so when I say that, about 70% of people seem to get about 30%, like, no, you're going to lose all your money that way or whatever. It's like, okay, I'm using dry sand in this analogy. Okay. And dry sand is different than wet sand. Wet sand you can squeeze, man. It's like almost like clay, right? Dry sand, if you squeeze it really hard, it all comes out of your fingers. And when you are that way with money and you think that way about money, and before anybody gets the wrong example here, I tell people all the time when I'm like, you give them business advice, I don't want to do it. I'm like, don't hate money. I have no opposition to bringing money in. I like money. But when you have that mindset, you're back to cheap in a way. There's kind of those two laws are cousins. And that means that you live in a world of scarcity in your mind. And you don't see opportunity. You see theft. The people that hold on to money tight, they're the ones that see the guy with the beautiful wife driving a Corvette up to his nice house and say, must be nice. And when I hear somebody say must be nice, I'm like, HFSP.
Yep.
Which means have fun staying poor because you're going to. When I see that guy, I think, I don't know what he did to do that, but good for him. And can I learn something? Right. And so when I look at my wealth that I've amassed through my life, I don't do dumb, foolish things with it, but I don't see it like, what's that song, Charlie Daniels, Lucius Clay?
Yeah, I love that song.
Lucius Clay was a greedy old man back in the swamp, and he buried all his gold in the ground. He dug it up every night and looked at it and put it back in the dirt. And you can't be that way and actually have wealth. Because Lucius in the song, you guys can look it up if you don't know the song, right? Lucius wasn't rich. He had a lot of money, but he wasn't rich because he didn't do anything with it. He didn't build anything with it. He didn't actually get any joy out of it. He was so worried somebody's going to take it away. And when you do that, you make bad economic decisions. And the people like that are always the ones that YOLO into something stupid. They're tied with their money, but then, this can't lose, and they're betting money on a horse race or something. And they're always the one that lose all their money. They're always the ones that make bad decisions with their money. When I say hold it loosely, what I mean is manage it well. Control where it flows and how it flows and where it goes and when it goes. And there's a lot of the laws in the book like that when you tell somebody that law initially, they either go, everybody knows that, they don't know what you're talking about, or they're like, no, because they don't understand what you're actually saying. And that's part of why I wrote the books, because a lot of these are well-known sayings that are misunderstood. And if we're ever going to fix the problems that we have in the world, we have to start communicating with each other in the same language. We haven't quite gotten to the Star Trek universal translator yet, where when I say a thing, even if you know the words, you actually hear what I'm saying. In fact, maybe it's more like the universal translator, right? Where like, even though you know the words, you don't necessarily know what I mean because I'm from a different culture or background or in Star Trek, like a planet than you, right? Like, you don't know what I'm saying. You don't know what I mean, but you assume you do. So I think what we need to do is start having like value in words again, to where we actually, like, if you're going to say a word, do you know what the word means? Like, one of the proudest moments I ever had as a father was my grandson popped off with something. I don't even remember what. And like, I was like, don't say nothing because it's not your place. Your granddad. And my boy goes in there and starts, my boy, he's a 30-year-old man. And he tells him, you don't use that word. You don't even know what that word means. And I'm like, yeah. Like, you did it right when you hear something like that. And so I want people to like start focus on what you're actually saying to other people. But more importantly, and this comes up in the book over and over, your mental computer, your brain. What are you saying to yourself? There's some things in the book that kind of dance around and you think, is he going off in like The Secret and manifesting it? No, there's no like metaphysical things in there. Like, you can manifest a thing, but you can manifest things in your mind, and you can set pathways in your mind. And the thing that makes those like hippy dippy things actually work a little bit is if your mind is attuned looking for an opportunity, sooner or later something that fits that will come and you'll see it. And if your mind is not attuned, it will still come. It just will go right past you and you'll never notice it. And that's very common. So this person was lucky. One of the laws that's going to be in the next book is preparation makes the inevitable educational. right? So when you are prepared, then the thing that's inevitably going to happen, you capitalize on it. If you're not in the right mindset, it'll go right by you. So again, this book, every chapter has certain, I call it code, to rewrite your brain. Somewhere in it, somewhere near the end, it will always come up. Instead of saying this, say this. Like when you look at something from the cheap standpoint and you say, I can't afford that, that's never what you say. You just told your brain, do not put any more energy, do not put any more life force, do not put any more effort into figuring this thing out. I, the chief programmer, have just said it's not worth your time. But if you say to your brain, how can I get that? Even if you say that on Monday and you don't think about it consciously again for 3 weeks, there's a background process. Just like that RAM in your computer running in the background. And it's working on that problem. And then you see something and you're like, oh, that was that thing. And then, oh, wait, I could do this. And sometimes you'll get an answer and it's a path you want to walk. And sometimes you'll get an answer and go, I could have that. But these are all the things I have to give up and the things I have to do for it. Now, if you just quit because it's hard, that's not being an adult. But when you say, yeah, but you know what I'm really worried about is making sure that the college fund for my son is fully funded and I don't want to give that up. And I'm making a conscious determination that I don't need that car. That's an adult decision. And there's a big difference between just quitting something because it's hard and understanding something to the point where you go, my time, money, effort, and talent are better off in this other silo. Because another thing that we have to all be aware of is the most precious capital we have is time, because time is life. We have a dash that we're burning right now, Billy.
Yep.
When you die, they're going to put your name somewhere and the day you were born and the year you died. And in the middle of those two dates, there's going to be a dash. That dash is you. And every day it gets a little shorter. You're burning it. And when you're spending time doing things that don't benefit your lifelong goals, you're wasting the greatest gift you've ever been given, which is that time to live here. And, you know, there's another thing I always tell people is never complain about getting old. It's a privilege denied to so many people.
Man, I tell you what, Jack, there's so much more. I know we're not going to have time to get into all of it, but I'm so glad that you included so much of that in the book, because with the abusive environment that I grew up in, all of these negative things were kind of programmed into me. And until I discovered the work of people like Joe Dispenza and a number of others like Ed Milet and, you know, people, until I went through their training and then rewired my brain to realize, you know what, and even go far, I mean, as far back as reading that first book from, Awaken the Giant Within from Tony Robbins. Yep.
Tony Robbins, yeah.
You know, until I rewired my brain and realized that, you know what, I don't have to have this, and it's all baked right into this book. And I was sitting here thinking, bro, do you have any, how many times I gave you mental high fives all through this book? But honestly, one of the big things that really put me on my heels, and it was one of the latest, it was the hardest lesson for me to learn because of the abusive environment that I grew up in. You know, when you grew up with two convicted felons as parents, and you know, we put the funk in dysfunctional. You don't know what's normal when you're around regular people, and I think so many people can relate to that. So when we got to the part where, and I'm not all the way through that part yet, but choose good friends.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be honest with you, man. There was so much of my life where I allowed my friends to choose me.
Yeah.
And whether it was in the Army, whether it was prior to that in high school and junior high or whatever, I wanted to be, you know, when you're in school, in compulsory school, I guess you want to be the popular kid for all the wonderful reasons.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always work out that way. You may wind up being the popular kid because you crapped your pants on the bus.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it could be any number of things.
Yeah.
Or maybe you don't look like everybody else, or maybe pick whatever it is. And so I'm not going to go through all of it, but I can't even believe you folks. I'm telling you this, there's so many profound points in this book, but for me, that's one of the big ones right there, because I eventually got to the point where I'm like, okay, I am going to choose my friends. They are not going to choose me.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be with low energy people who are going to only take me down. I'm not saying that you should always be looking for Ed Mylett to be your friend or a Jack Spirko.
Yeah.
But just like you said, when you raise your standards, automatically you'll start seeing people come into view that you never would have considered before, where it was my knee-jerk reaction to just go for the bottom barrel, whoever will be my friend kind of person.
Who was there, right? Who, especially in school, you're kind of stuck.
Yeah.
And I get it. I really don't beat up on kids for this that are stuck in a school, because you end up in a pecking order and you kind of have to carve your niche out. But then when you leave, like, you know, they get on people like my family, we homeschool, like, because they need the real world. No, the real world is after school, right? Things that go on in a school that we tell kids to like apologize for, somebody goes to jail for in the real world. So let's just forget that altogether. So the kids all give a pass, but at some point when you grow up, you have to stop blaming your past. Your past had some real problems. My past has some real problems, you know. And if I was still part of that part of my family, there would still be problems. I had to get, and that's a hard thing to do, but I had to leave. But for me, what happened, you know, I joined the military. I was only in the military about 3 years. I joined, I was 17 years old. So when I got out, I was like a couple months before my 21st birthday when I got out of the Army. I mean, you're still a kid. But even then, I went back home, right? And I thought, man, these guys I went to school with, and the gals I went to school with, they all changed. And it took me about a week to go, no, actually, this is a problem. They're exactly the same. They graduated high school 3 years ago, and they're still the same person.
Yep.
I changed. I got to get the hell out of here. And that was kind of the genesis of absorbing this law. And that was the point in my life where I started reading everything I could about self-improvement, building businesses, and a lot of things about spirituality as well, and started to discover who I was and how the human condition worked. And this is one of those things I picked up. And so my standard for you to be my friend, and let me explain what I mean by friends, first of all. I'm a big guy on movies. I love movies, especially certain parts of movies. Remember the movie Tombstone, one of the first, you know, modern Wyatt Earp ones? There's a part where they're out hunting down the outlaws, and Doc Holliday's coughing up blood. And one of the guys says to him, "Hell, Doc, what are you doing out here?" And he says, "Wyatt Earp is my friend."
Says, "Hell,
Doc, I got lots of friends." And Doc just says, "I don't. I have never identified more with a character in a movie than that."
Yep.
When I say friend, I don't mean I know you and I'm nice to you and I like you and I'll pick the phone up if you call me. I mean, I'll pick up the phone and I'll come help you move, or I'll come help you get out of jail. That's what I mean when I say I'm your friend. I mean that we'll go hunting together and spend 3 days together in the woods. I mean that I've got a couple hours and you want to come over and I'll sit on my porch and have a beer with you. So to understand what friend means, it's not acquaintance, it's friend. I'll spend the valuable time I have with you. For that person to qualify for that, I have to be able to identify one thing in that person that I want to be a little more like. It doesn't have to be everything. They don't have to be more successful than me. They don't have to be better looking, because who is, right? You know, like, and that is in jest. I know what I look like. I have a face and a voice for radio. But there has to be something. Like one of my best friends in the world, this guy, David. This dude, he says he doesn't care for people. It's a shield. He comes to my workshops. There's 75 people out in my shop. 2 hours into it, you can go, "Who's that?" He knows his name, or he knows everything about that person. I'm not that guy. I can't do that. That's one way I want to be a little bit more like David. And hopefully there's some things about me that he wants to be a little more like. This is intrinsically important because you do become more like the people you spend your time with. And I have a story in the book about this that I think is really drives this home from a stupid angle. You know, military, you guys, we come up with stupid sayings that like in a unit that maybe only went as far as the unit. And it was goofy and dumb and sophomoric, but you're 18, 19 years old and you're stuck in a place. That's what guys do. And so somehow in this aviation unit I was in, this thing came up when you tell somebody to do something, they don't want to do it. If you're scared, say you're scared. I get that it's stupid sounding. I understand it, but it's just what happened. I go home on leave and I say this to one of my buddies like one time just because it rolls out of my mouth. I go back in country. I come back 6 months later. And I hear this saying in this little podunk town I'm from like 10 times from people I don't even know. Me saying this stupid, nonsensical statement that nobody should ever say because it's dumb, spread through this little town. And I'm not that influential. It wasn't like, hey, we got to say this because Jack's. No, right? I promise you, at that time of my life, I had no influence on anybody, even myself, right? I was pretty low level at that point. But that one statement spread that way. If that spreads that way, and you hang out with somebody that's a effing loser, I'm sorry, but that's what they are, even if they're a nice guy, every day, you're going to take on their thoughts. You're going to take on their attitude. And when you say something like, we should really do something more with our lives, and they go, who cares? You're going to absorb a little piece of that. Maybe not, it won't maybe destroy you all in one go. But again, it's that, it's only a little bit of crack. Just smoke a little bit of crack. It's not that big. And next thing you know, you're a crack addict. Well, what you are in this case is you are a defeatist addict. You become attached to defeatist language. And sometimes you need to do what I did. I moved 1,500 miles away. Sometimes you need to move to the other side of your city. Because if you came up with people and you're kind of in a clique and you're kind of in that group and that's not going anywhere, you can't get out. Was the other movie, They Pulled Me Back In, right? Like, that's what happens, right? They pull you back in because they don't want you to get ahead. I remember, like, when I was 16 years old when I moved out of my parents' house. I had friends that were like 18, 19 years old that were still living at home. And when I said I'm going to get my own place, I said, get your own place. You have to pay bills. Not, hey, you're too young. Hey, you'll have to pay bills, right? So if you think that attitude's new, we're going back to like 1987 here. Right? You see what I'm saying? Like, see, this attitude of like, I don't want this person to get ahead of me. I want this person to stay in my orbit. I want this person to stay in my level is not new. And this lack of motivation is not new either. I mean, for us in Gen X to talk about the lack of motivation in like millennials and Gen Zs, we're a little arrogant with that. We were the least motivated freaking people in our 20s that ever existed.
Yeah, the Spicolis out there. Yeah,
right. Yeah, but what happened is somewhere in that mid 20s, early 30s, Gen X like kicked over and became this like get shit done generation. But we also shut up. And we completely, in my opinion, failed in our obligation. We didn't turn back around to the people behind us and say, follow me. We went mercenary. That's another reason I wrote this book, Billy, is I started reflecting on my life and said, thank God I've done my podcast for 17 years because it's what I gave back. Till the day I started this podcast, I was a mercenary. I got very successful very fast, and I did everything for the right reasons for my family. Nothing meant more to me than taking care of my wife and my son. I became a father of a boy who was 7 years old when I stepped into the role. That's a hard thing to do. You have to win not just the woman, you have to win the child. That's harder. You have to earn that. And I did everything I could for them. But at some point I realized I was making myself miserable and I didn't understand why. I looked around, I'm like, we have a nice house. We don't even think about a bill. It doesn't even matter. Right? We don't worry about anything anymore. And, 5 years before that, we worried about everything. Like, why aren't you happy? You made it. And I think that's what it was. There was no purpose in it other than for me. And so when I started doing the show, I went back to what my original passion always was. And it wasn't a thing. It was teaching. I don't care if I'm teaching permaculture. I don't care if I'm teaching aquaponics. I don't care if I'm teaching business principles. I don't care if I'm teaching somebody how to use AI. I don't care what I'm teaching somebody. If I know how to do something and there's a willing learner in front of me, you can't shut me down. Now, if the person's not willing, I'm gone. I will not force feed somebody information. But if somebody wants something and I have it, I'm going to give it to them. When I started my podcast, that just poured out of me in droves. And I got really bored of doing the political stuff really, really fast, even though it brought a lot of listeners in. And I was more worried about how do you prepare your home so you can survive a hurricane? How do you grow a garden that will feed you? How do you manage your money so you can make sure that your kids have whatever they want in their life? I've already done it, so now I owe it to you to help. And I feel like our generation, Gen X, we just sprinted ahead. And then we turned around and said, what's wrong with you people? Well, how about a little leadership? Because one thing we did get, mostly from the silence, not really the boomers, right? Mostly from the silence and the GI generations, our grandparents and great-grandparents, we got that leadership. Somewhere it spiraled out of control. I think it had a lot to do with kind of the boomers went all hippie and what have you. And then society did things too, right? Like the whole 1971 thing, that's when women got to enter the workplace, which that means is that's when we became two-income families and you and I became latchkey kids.
Yep.
That's when that happened. So we kind of came out of this mercenary mode because of circumstance. But if I'm going to hold other people to the standard, at some point you have to stop and say, what happened is what happened. What matters is going forward. Then we have to hold ourselves accountable too. So when you asked me why I wrote this book, a big part of it was that I owe people who are me at 20 to tell them what I wish somebody would have done for me at 20. Because if somebody would have been willing to tell me these things when I was 20 years old, I would have went crazy. You would have had to blow me out of an opportunity with dynamite to have mentorship like I'm willing to provide today. Like that would have been everything to me. I remember telling, just tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Right.
And getting with a few exceptions, and some of the mentors are noted in the book, not much. And what I learned is my greatest mentors, they mentored me with 2 sentences and walked away and thought he'll do it or they won't. So like I do that now. I know you know Nicole Sauce. Like I've done some stuff to help her with her business. And like at one point, my entire mentorship was buy the beans. That was it. Well, what? Nope. I'm out. That's my advice. Now, if you don't take it, that's fine. But that's my advice. This was during COVID and there were supply shortages and she had like a big expenditure to keep her coffee roasting business going. And I listened to the whole thing and the financials. And that was my advice, buy the beans. And she did, and she crushed it. Right. So that's the kind of advice I like to do. That's the kind of mentorship I want to give, is these simple things. And then you have to go discover what it means for you. But God, somebody needs to do this. And it's not me. I can't do it all. You can't do it all. And I'm not saying we're special people. I'm saying like, this is generational. Our whole generation, we're in our 50s. Like most Gen Xers are 50, late 40s. Maybe we're ebbing in early 60s now. Like how much time do we have to make up for this mindset? One of the people I really love in this world, I don't listen to him that much, but I love what he does. And he has the same ethos as Adam Curry.
Oh yeah.
Who we both should have a picture of this man on our wall, because what we do is because he built it, right? He built podcasting as we know it today. And he feels the same way. Like he's a little older than us. So mid 80s, he was a VJ on MTV, rolling with all the celebrities and all. And he's like, we totally screwed these younger people. We just ran away from them. And now it's our turn to be the leaders and to give to them. And that doesn't mean give them our money, because that won't help. I mean, that's another principle I try to teach. Like money's power. You give power to somebody that's not ready for it yet. What do? You hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You know a lot about electricity, right?
Oh yeah.
Remember 1980s? What did we do with 9-volt batteries?
Exactly.
Put your tongue to the battery, right? Today we put nose rings to batteries, right? And it's funny because it hurts. It's not harmful. There's a big difference between, that's another thing, man. Young folks, there's a difference between being hurt and being harmed. All right. Just understand that. But it doesn't really harm any. It's a joke. If I hooked up like 30 car batteries into a battery bank and then gave you the leads, if there's no amount of money that would get you, because you understand power, to put that to your tongue, because you're going to fry yourself and die. Right. When we move into the world of money, and we have so many young people now that think if I just had more money, my life would be better. I'm telling you, I know it's hard to believe until you fix all the structural components. No, it won't. You can only do so much damage to yourself with $1,000. The damage you can do to yourself with $1 million is unbelievable. And, remember Rodney King? He got money that I believe he had coming to him. What happened to him was wrong, and I'm glad he got his money. But where he ended up? Dead at the bottom of a swimming pool a few years later, because he wasn't prepared for the power that money gave him. And I know so many people out there right now, they're ready to turn this off because I said that. Because, man, he doesn't know me. If I had him, my life would. No, it won't. No, it won't. And when you fix the structural problems, the money problems will fix themselves. But it's the other thing. Patience, bro. Like, this is the other thing. Like, you tell people, like you mentioned Bitcoin earlier. I told you to invest it. You tell people to invest in Bitcoin now. They're like, since they can't see themselves getting rich in the next 6 months, they're not going to do it. This is a marathon. You have to have patience. So when I say if you fix the structural problems, the money will fix itself, I don't mean overnight. I don't mean over a year. I mean over half a decade. That you'll change that. But you have two choices. Start that process now or burn more of your dash.
Man, I couldn't agree more. And I'll tell you what, folks, Jack has been a tremendous blessing in my life privately. I mean, his wisdom is made all the difference in how I do business and how I structure things around here. And because of what he said earlier, because I know his track record, I was like, okay, when he gives me a piece of advice about something, and Jack, do you have time for one question?
I got as much time as you want, bro.
Okay. One of the biggest things, well, there's so many of them out there after having listened to him all these years, but honestly, I was one of the people that was looking at ChatGPT like the Ring of Mordor. Like, okay, man, what am I going to unleash here? And he put it in terms, I'm going to feel like Forrest Gump when I say this, but he put it in terms that even I could understand it. It was like having a digital assistant that you could absolutely, that you pay very little to.
Yeah.
And return on investment is otherworldly. It really is, especially at this point. Now, I use it quite a bit in business in a massive way. But it brings me in the farmer Cheryl, who's asking, does Jack tell us how to use ChatGPT in the book? I believe he has a teaching. I believe he's teaching a live course on it.
I am, but so we released the course a few weeks ago, and then we had like a 10-day run up so everybody could get ready for it. It sold out in like 15 minutes. It took 15 minutes because the site crashed because of the scripts that Tom was running on the back end. So it would have sold out in a minute. So I don't have any enrollment availability of that right now. If you go to Jack's Laws, you can pre-register for the next term. I don't tell people how to use it in the book because when I started writing the book, it wasn't actually a thing yet. That's how long this book took to come out. In the new book, I mentioned it quite a bit, but I'm not going to write a how to use AI book because I feel by the time the book gets in print, how to use it will change a lot, right? But here's the thing. Whatever fear you had of it, once you started using it and saw its failings along with its advantages, you realize, yeah, this isn't the Sarah Connor thing that's going to come back and kill John, right? Like, that's not what this is. This is a predictive language model. But to me, if today you're saying, I refuse to use AI because whatever excuse, it's a demon, it's going to take over the world, whatever, you are in 1995 saying, I refuse to use Microsoft Excel. And you're in 1998 saying, I refuse to use the internet. And you're in 2004 saying, I refuse to use social media. And you're trying to run a business. Now, if you're not trying to run a business, this one's going to get you anyway, because the person you're competing with for the next job is going to know how to use it. And the power in this is much bigger than have a compose an email. That doesn't interest me. It is the structural components to how to run a business. It is planning. It is information gathering. Understand this. In about 2 years, almost nobody is going to use Google to search for anything.
I agree.
They're going to ask AI. And even if you don't think you're asking AI because you're still using Google, you're not going to be using Google search. It's going to be an AI output. Because when you say, how do I, and you find a web page and you read the web page and it's not actually the answer, and then you go back and you finally get the answer, you're happy. But if you could if all you wanted was the answer and you could just have the answer, even if you have to fact check the answer, it's much more expedient. That's part of it. But it is more like, I just listened to this podcast that Robert Breedlove did with a guy named Jeff Woods.
Yeah.
It's Jeff spelled with a G, Geoff, Jeff Woods. And he's really big into AI. And he had this process that he outlined. And I'm like, okay, it's what I'm doing with one refinement. And I haven't actually been able to explain it the way that he did. So I'll use his way. And it is like, I think he calls it the CHIT method. It's CRIT. Context, role, interview, task. To explain to you how powerful this is. So you give the context. I am a podcaster. I do the Permaculture Pimp podcast. These are the things that we produce. These are the things that we do. This is what give as much information as you want to. Role. You are an online business consultant with expertise in fill in the blanks of what you want to know about, right? Interview. Ask me 3 to 5 questions, one at a time, to get a better understanding of me and my business and my goals. Role. Show me 10 ways to maximize revenue or maximize whatever it is you want to do that are non-obvious. The output will break your brain. Because the thing about the non-obvious, once you read it, you're like, well, that was always obvious. That's one thing this can do. But if you're worried about it becoming like this sentient thing that takes over the world, okay, first of all, the word artificial intelligence is a marketing term. It is not intelligent, right? Maybe artificial intelligence is the right word if we'll understand words again. Artificial, fake, intelligence, smart. Fake, smart. That's what it really is. It is a predictive model, but it has all this data. But ask it to do a math problem and see how many different answers you get when you keep asking it. So it can't do basic math. And you think it's going to like take over the traffic system in Phoenix and then take over the world with sentient robots or something? This is not what it is. And the people that say it's going to take our jobs, well, then you better learn to use it, right? Then you better learn to use it. And you know, you're an electrician. Do you see Optimus robots from Tesla installing? No, right? How do we get that piece of conduit through the header over that door that wasn't in the no? Or a pipe fitting job or a like welding in a factory? Sure. And you know what? We've been doing that since the 70s. I'm not even impressed by it doing it in a factory. The same weld in the same place every time. Any robotic arm can do that with no intelligence. Boom, fire for so long, back up, right? It's not going to hook up a trailer to a truck, drive it out in the middle of an oil field, and get a rig running again. And the dude that's doing that right now is making $140,000 to $160,000 a year. Well, you're worried about your communications degree or whatever. No matter what you're doing, there's going to be an AI application in this. But the place that it is going to be the strongest for is entrepreneurs and thought leaders. And the thing is, you have to see AI as an employee, and it's a multifunctional employee, and each role needs to be individual. So you know what I just said about this content, role, interview, task? So I was playing with that in my like not with the students, because I don't give students things till I learn. But I'm also sharing every day in my class. I make a PDF of my work and I give it to them so they can see the real world workings that I'm using in my business. And I did that process for episode prep. It worked great until I tried to build the episode. It got locked in the persona and it wouldn't let go of it. So when I started things like I want bullet points, I want my voice and my tone to write 2 paragraphs of introduction for the show notes, it couldn't do it worth a damn. And when I said let go of that, it even admitted to me like, oh yeah, I'm still being that. Well, don't. Okay. And then like, you're still doing it. Yeah, I can't. It literally said it couldn't let go.
Wow.
Right. So it has inherent limitations. So what that means is if you want to put it in that role, then when you want to put it into a different role, start a new chat, or it will stay stuck. It will get in a feedback loop with that. So if you wanted to do things that are like as a graphic artist, then get it to act like one. If you want to do it to be a writer, and you can, like with GPT, you can literally create custom GPTs that you could call like Billy's writing assistant. And you can give it a bunch of your writing and a bunch of it and fine tune it, and then only use that when you're writing. Now, this guy, Jeff, he's doing things like he created personas for like all these titans of business, people I don't particularly care for, but it's his deal, like Jeff Bezos or whatever. And so he creates these personas and then he runs things by them. But I love the way he was doing it because he's like, well, one of the people on my like virtual board that I run my ideas by is Steve Jobs. But I have programmed into his, he's absolutely not allowed to give me any advice on marriage or families. So he's using them to his strength. Like if you want to know how to grow a business, that's a good guy to ask. You want to know how to be a good father? Don't. Right. So we can build, like, imagine that you can talk to anybody you want to about your goals. Who would it be? If it's not like somebody you know personally, we'll go talk to them, right? If it's some well-known personality that has work out there, then there's enough knowledge about that person. You can literally create a version of that person. And this guy's been building companies by the billions of dollars with this approach, this again, context, role, interview, task, as simple as that is. And he's like, 20% of the stuff it puts out is garbage. I only care about the 80. I only care about the part that works. And when something doesn't work, I just don't use that, right? If I gave you a great tool and I said it does these 5 things, it did 4 of them perfectly and 1 of them poorly, you would just use it for the other 4 things. That's how to approach AI. But God, stop being afraid of it, people. If you're afraid of a calculator in 1920, right? You're going to use an abacus while everybody's moving to a calculator. You're afraid of a phone. You're the caveman that wanted to ban fire. You can't put this away. It's not going away. It's not going away. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but even if I used it for nothing more than research, which in that, for example, prime example, I'm out here. I make some pretty awesome compost, and I'm always looking for ways to tweak it and make it better. And I can go through and do thought experiments to a certain extent, like, oh, what if I were to add, let's say, fish hydrolysate to this compost at this particular thing? And then, of course, I can always check it, look at it under the microscope, but I can already see whether or not, and I may be going a little bit too far in the weeds, but the point is, I just hired another employee without having to pay for it. I'm able to get 10 times more done in terms of research on any given topic. And like you said, you may not always get the best outcome, but your common sense, if it's already something I know that I know about, I can already kind of see and say, I don't know if this thing's going to work out all right. But like you said, it is a fantastic tool. And bro, this is one of the many things I need to thank you for, and you know, to your point earlier, because you didn't beat me over the head with it. You just said, hey bro, you're missing a really great tool. So I kind of went.
You tell your people, what has it done for you? How much product have you gotten by having it compose emails to companies saying, here's who I am, here's what I do. If you give me a product, I'll review it for you.
Exactly. I can't even, well over $100,000 worth of stuff sitting in that garage right now. And all I did was say, construct me an email to this company. And then once I did it several times, it kind of knew who I was and what I did. And it was already locked in there. So I'm like, okay, do you have any idea how long it would ordinarily take me to reach out to a company for a product that I already know works, that I already know that I like? You know, it would honestly, because I'm sitting here thinking, okay, blah, 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 blah. Do I want to word it this way? Do I want to? I'm doing in minutes what ordinarily would take me hours to try and construct. So now I don't have to waste time on that stuff there. Now I can go out there. Oh, I can go weed eat the, the part after the sheep, or I can go do something that really matters to me. And I'm not spending so much time on the things that I don't. And I use this virtual assistance to help me do that. But now there are areas where I am just bitterly opposed to using it. And, I mean, maybe we can discuss that at another time, but there are areas where, like I said, there's probably 100 G's worth of stuff out there in the garage. And then now all of a sudden there's people sending stuff to me that, I mean, for example, like right out there right now, I got probably $80,000. Actually saying 100,000 is probably very conservative, probably closer to $200,000. I got probably $80,000 of off-grid solar equipment out there that I haven't even done anything yet. Because honestly, my policy is, I'll check it out for you. But if it doesn't work, I'm not going to tell people that it does if it doesn't. But I still got the stuff and it's here. But that's just one of many ways in which you can go about it. I mean, really, Jack, the sky's the limit. And you were the one that actually turned me on to it. So, I mean, that's just one of many, 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 many ways in which I've used this Chat GPT. Folks, I know a lot of you have other questions out there, but look, I've often said...
Don't throw them. Just put question.
Okay, well, let me go ahead and hit this other one, and then we'll probably have to bounce here, but this is definitely in your wheelhouse here, because I know you've addressed it before, but I don't even know how to pronounce this name, but it says, if the grid goes down, what good is Bitcoin?
If a nuclear bomb goes off, what good is your stocks?
What good is your silver?
Right. What good is your oxygen? Right. These are these like, but it's going to be quantum. Like these things are like people that don't want to accept a thing. So they'll come up with an extreme way that the thing could fail. So the person asking that question, I'm not picking on, but I'm betting you this person probably has a bank account. So if the grid goes down, what good's your bank account?
Thank you.
Okay. They probably have a 401k and they're probably invested either in mutual funds or ETFs. If the grid goes down, they're all bankrupt. Right. And what do you think is going to make the grid go down and stay down forever? That won't be the end of the world. And the last thing you'll be worried about is the value of your Bitcoin in that scenario. Right. Everything I teach from a preparedness standpoint is you should be doing things that make your life better, even if nothing goes wrong. So here you have the hardest money that's ever been created. You have a known economic constant. And people get really weird when I say this because they think I'm like turning it into a god or something stupid. Right. Bitcoin is to economics what the speed of light is to physics. Okay. And if you know what the speed of light is to physics, then it makes sense. And if you don't know, you think it's some hyperbole. The speed of light to physics is it's a constant 186,000 miles per second. Everything we measure with physics, we can measure against the constant of the speed of light because we know what it is and it doesn't change. Everything else in the physical universe can be altered by another action in the physical universe. Something comes in, it changes its directions, it changes velocity, it changes speed, not light. Light moves at a constant period no matter what. It doesn't matter if you have it leave a vehicle moving 20,000 miles an hour or leave a stationary object, it still moves at the same speed. That's a constant. Bitcoin is a constant in economics. 21 million Bitcoin, never anymore, infinitely divisible, moves at the speed of light across the world and is saleable across space and time. It is a constant. Doesn't mean it's good or bad. It just means it's a constant. So you can bet things on its mathematical probability. And once you understand that, then you say, well, what else does that? And the answer is nothing, because anything that's a clone of it, a fork or whatever came after it, you can only discover absolute scarcity once. It was the 0 to 1 move of hard money. And the people that are all in on gold, you haven't studied gold enough to understand why we have fiat. Like, I really recommend, I'm supposed to be shilling my book. I'm going to shill somebody else's book. Safety and Amos, the Fiat Standard, which was his last book in a series, but you should read it first because it breaks down how we ended up with fiat money. And it starts out with, before we just start criticizing it, why did we end up with it anyway? Did we just end up with it because bankers were greedy? Or was there a problem they were trying to solve? And he tells this parable, I think it's from Turkey. It's an ancient Turkish parable about this guy that ends up with this piece of land, and there's a stone wall that doesn't really seem like it does anything. And it separates his land from the next guy's land, but it ends. So it doesn't really do that. And he wants to tear it down. And the neighbor says, well, what is it there for? Who put it there and why is it there? And the guy says, I don't know. And he says, until you can tell me why it's there, I don't think I'm going to let you tear it down. So that's what he starts out that book with. He describes what the problem was that fiat was trying to solve. It wasn't just about greed. It became greed because it's unlimited power. But the problem was that if I want to move gold from London to Tokyo, it's very expensive. And if I want to make gold divisible down to buy something like this little remote control for the lighting in my shop that's $20, how much gold is that? It costs me more money to break that piece of gold off than the value of the gold itself. So I have to have the gold sitting in bars in somebody's vault. I have to have a third-party intermediary, and I have to trust that the gold really is doing what it says. Gold has great salability across time. It has piss-poor salability across space. When you move into the world of Bitcoin, you have created and enforced scarcity. There will never be 21 million in one Bitcoin. It can't be done. The largest, most powerful computer network in a decentralized fashion in the world defends that more than anything else. That and preventing counterfeiting. So you have that. The most successful thing based on money and based on power that humans have ever built is the Bitcoin network in every measurable way in a single decade. Like, we've never built anything that fast, that powerful, that strong, and that successful. And so we have that. And now we have programmable money. Programmable money. And that means we can integrate it into everything. And like, I take credit cards, right? Okay. But people decide if I remain able to take a credit card. People decide if you can use your credit card with me. I've literally had customers saying, I called PayPal. I tried to pay you with PayPal.
Yep.
And PayPal told me they can't tell me why they won't let the charge go through.
Yep. Same here.
And that I need to find another way to pay you, right? So if I'm integrating payment systems into my app, into my business, whatever, the best payment system I can integrate is a permissionless, uncensorable one. And we're not all the way there yet, but we're watching each piece of this be built. And you followed me with this long enough to know and this is not because I'm smart. I just pay attention to smart people. Everything that I've publicly said would happen with Bitcoin has happened with Bitcoin, as though somebody gave me the script starting in 2025, go back to 2015, and there's not a thing in it that I've gotten wrong. Again, it's not because I'm smart. It's because it's a constant, it's predictable, and people way smarter than me have given the information freely, and I've weeded through all of it, including the idiots, and pulled out only the useful, like Jeet Kune Do with Bruce Lee, right? And then, okay, the path is set. So you can ignore it and HFSP. That's your choice. I don't try to create disciples of this or anything. I just tell you the way that it is. And there's a point in time where something does what it's supposed to do long enough. When will it, like the people like that, again, I'm not picking on her because I know who it was, and she has some really good other comments, right? So this is a smart person. How long does it have to do what it says it's going to do before you accept that it's going to keep doing it? Is it 10 years? Because we're past that, right? It's actually, Bitcoin was created in 2009 and officially really fully launched in 2010. That's 15 years. If it was Tulip Mania, bro, did not last 15 years.
No, barely last 15 months.
Yeah. It is what it is. And I just say everybody needs to do what they think is right with it, but don't ignore it because you have some sort of implicit bias, and don't ignore it because you haven't done the work to understand it. At least understand. This is one of my things in the book, right? Believe whatever you want. Know why you believe what you believe. Most people that have this opinion about Bitcoin cannot explain 3 things about Bitcoin without Google that are right, that are correct. You know, how is a Bitcoin created? How is a Bitcoin transaction verified? And how is scarcity enforced? And I could have done 10 other things. I'm just picking 3 at random. You can't tell me those 3 things and you tell me I'm wrong. I'm sorry. I don't take advice from people that, you know, aren't successful in the area that they're giving advice on.
No, it's all making sense. Folks, I'm telling you, not the best podcaster in the business for nothing. Of course, he's too humble to ever tell you that, folks. If you're not listening to the Survival Podcast, oh my goodness. I mean, there's archives that go way, way back, and he covers everything from a lightning bolt to a lightning bug. Jack covers it all. And I'm telling you what, this book right here, Laws of Life. Jack, where's the best place for folks to go out there and get a copy?
Well, you can just go to Amazon and search for it, or you can go to jackslaws.com and get some bonus material that goes with it, and you can get the book from there. But I have a big announcement.
Yeah.
The day I said it was coming, like not like I'm writing it, like published date is locked in. After all these people are like, I want you to write a book. I want you to write. Is it going to be available in audio? I'm like, I got like 60,000 hours of audio. You wanted a book. Now you want it in audio. I published with KDP via Amazon. About 2 days ago, I got an email from KDP. It says you now are qualified for instant Audible. And so today, it only took 48 hours after they did it, the audio version of the book's available. So if you'd rather listen to an audio, couple things. It is AI generated. You can tell there is, you know, it's a good voice. I picked the best one there was out of all the choices, but there's certain points where you can tell. And like if I used an abbreviation, it will mess that up a little bit, right? Because AI is not good at that. Or like there's times where I said like, you know, blank. So like do underscore for a blank and it says underscore. So just know it's not perfect, but if you prefer your content audio, you can get it in audio. And I was listening to it today and it's pretty damn good for pushing a couple buttons and saying publish.
Man, that's awesome. I'm glad to have the book. I mean, you know, with all the crazy stuff going on in the world right now, I don't know. I'm trying to I realize how reliant I have been on a lot of the niceties out there, the you know, all the things that everybody else enjoys, and I'm trying to go a little more old school, which is why I enjoy books more. And honestly, it's just another medium for me to keep the old material, you know, keep the eyes and the ears and all the other things keep going, you know, as they ought to be. So folks, I mean, Jack, is there any other thing that you have coming up in terms of classes or, I know for a while back you had, I mean, you still have the website going where you have all your classes on there stuff.
Yeah, I have a site called, there's a lot of people in here that are obviously into permaculture and regen ag and stuff. And I have a site called homefoodssystems.com. I have a class on composting. I have a class on cover crops, and I have a class on principle-based design. The principle-based design class is free. Anybody can take it. It's kind of like, do I like this guy as a teacher? Do I think he's a jerk? You know, and you decide that by taking the free class if you want to. You took both of the paid classes. We gave you, a seat on them, and you've said that you've learned more in some of those than classes you've spent thousands of dollars for.
Yeah,
one class is like $40, and the other was like $80, right? So those are available. Also, I do a workshop annually. You need to be in the fold to come to this, though, because it sells out in minutes. And I say that a lot about things I put on sale, and people on the outside think it's just marketing. It's not. It's a sincere, honest statement that if you're not there, you're not getting in. This year, we're going to be able to let more people in. I've done this at my house since 2013, and I've probably run 30 workshops in that many years, because in the beginning we were stupid and we did like 4 a year, and we backed down to 1 because my wife told me I was being wrong and she was right. But this year we decided we're moving to a location about 15 minutes south of us. It's a YMCA campus, 300 acres, giant lake, river access, huge facility to do our presentations. So we're probably going to sell 85 instead of 50 tickets this year. So it's going to be easier to get in, but it's still going to be, if you don't wake up on that Saturday morning, and if you're not sitting there waiting for that link to drop, you're not going to be able, it'll sell out in 15 minutes instead of 5, right? But it is life-changing. I'd love for you to get down to one. You're always invited, Billy, as like a presenter or something like that. I would love to have you here. It is a life-changing experience. You're sitting in a room and half the people are multimillionaires and half the people are just getting started in life. And the networking it's not a networking event, but it happens anyway. And the way I know we're successful is, one, we've been doing it that long, and every event we do, 60, 70% of the people have been to at least one. 20 to 30% of the people have been to like almost all of them. So they're coming back at that. The big thing though is we have this rule on Sunday morning. You have to go home, but you can't stay here. We got to put my lap back together. There will be a group of people at the gate. And as long as they're at the gate, I leave them alone. They'll be there talking to each other for 2 or 3 hours after they're supposed to be gone, because they don't want it to go away. Because we bring people together that think like we do, and you realize I'm not alone. And so I'd love to have people come to that. The AI class, I think we'll do another one probably about September. The one we did this first round, we take 100 students per class. I drop the instructions each day in a Telegram group, a private group, along with a video that leads students through it. And I answer questions that came in the day before. And I just can't handle more than 100 students in a class like that. It's just not doable. And it's the first round, so we knew we would do things not maybe perfect. So we charged $100 for a 40-day class, which I thought was dirt cheap. And the next one will probably be $300. And right now, we're on day 9 today. Every student in the class has pretty much said it's already worth the money. It's 9 days in, it's already worth the money, because we're teaching people like, how long ago I told you about this. I've been using this in my business. So people are like, why not Gemini? Why not, whatever else? Because I use GPT and I know it. Like, you can take it and do whatever you want with the information I give you, but I want to be a good teacher. When you say this isn't working, I want to know what the corrective action is, or, oh yeah, it sucks at that and it doesn't do it well.
Bro, I got to be honest with you, man. I think now we're not going to throw around the word cheap, but I honestly,
that's cheap.
I'll be the
that's cheap.
I'm going to be the first one to tell you. I said this to you before. Your composting class alone, I thought, was 1/10 of what you should be charging. Having paid thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to learn under some of the best in the world, you distilled down pretty much all the information.
I redneckized it.
Well, you put it in a way. We can call it whatever you want, but honestly, you took out all the BS, left in the relevant stuff, and I was like, okay, this is phenomenal. And what I loved about it is that you train in a way. Now, please don't take this the wrong way, but your training is what reminds me. You know how in the military they cut out all the BS.
Yep. They
get you trained, and you're competent on the other end of it, but they do it in a very condensed way. And that's the way I thought you did with your composting class. I was like, how on earth did he put all this, all the necessary information in here without the BS? And you got out for a fraction of the money. I just thought you didn't charge enough for it. But, at the end of the day, I was still thankful for the training and honestly, I learned some additional things that I didn't get from the other courses. And that's the benefit of learning from multiple people.
It is military-based training. Like I said, I was only in the military 3 years, right? But I think especially if you do it when you're really young, like you're a teenager, even a 3-year stitch will stick with you for the rest of your life. And there's 2 big things I took from the military. I was a mechanic in the military. I worked on heavy wheel vehicles like Hemmets and 917 tractor trailer trucks and stuff like that. And to fix that equipment, it's a part changer is like a glorified Jiffy Lube. To fix something that's broken, you have to know how to troubleshoot.
Yep.
So that was one thing, and that stayed with me. I don't care if it's a sales team that I'm managing, troubleshooting. There's a problem. Let's not look at where the problem is. Let's trace the system back. You're an electrician. Where is the problem coming from? And let's correct the underlying problem. There's that, and there's how to teach and how to train. There's a process. And if you follow that process, the student can't help but learn. And very much the medical industry is like the media, the military. See one, do one, teach one. That is like the ethos to teaching that we lose in a classroom because the student doesn't do anything, right? They sit down and they do their work or whatever. And now they do their work like this. Get up and actually physically do the thing, right? Teach and correct and demonstrate. That's leadership in your teaching. That was pounded into me as a recruit. It was pounded into me, when I became an E4 and I was running a squad by a very good senior NCO and E7 that I served under. This is your job. And I'm like, I knew I'm not staying. I'm not the re-enlistment NCO, like, go away. I'm not staying in. But I'm like, I'm going to take this. This is something I'm going to take with me for the rest of my life. So to this day, I teach with that model.
Well, it works, and it works well. Jack, one more time, tell everybody where they can find you.
They can find me at thesurvivalpodcast.com or thesurvivalpodcast.com, depending on where in the country you're from. Some say the, some say the. Or you just go to tspc.co. That's my main website. There you'll find 3,693 episodes of the show as of today. Wow. If you can think of something in the space between, entrepreneurship to permaculture to survival to off-grid, you name it, we've covered it. Either I've covered it or I've had guests. Once a week, I do an expert panel show where I have just a lineup of amazing experts. I have an engineer, I have a homestead consultant, I have a plant propagation specialist, I have 2 doctors. And so we have these people that are able to take questions and answer them. And come on by and check us out. And if you don't like me, that's okay. But, at least check me out first.
Think you're going to dig him, folks. Thanks so much for coming on, Jack, y'all. That didn't quite come out the way I intended. Man, thanks so much for coming on the program, Jack. I want to give a hat tip to everybody out there in the chat. And, of course, over there at Renewed Homestead for handling the chat. Look, y'all. Things are getting crazy. Things are getting real. And this is where you can get all the information you need. So until next time, stay alert, stay alive.
Wisdom from Saul and permaculture dream. Let the ideas unfold. I'm moving with the truth. Feeling nature's good. Who's got the answers? All we need to do. Listen to the earth, they got us through. Change, watch the world spin. From the smallest sprout to harmony begin. In the cycle of life, where the magic's alive. Tune it to the beat, feel the fire and thrive. True. So much